so much for joining myself and Maniacs today. Really, really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Songs of Loss and Separation. This must have been an incredibly cathartic piece of work for you to write.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah, it was, and over a long stretch of time as well, just really documenting, both Adam and I documenting parts of our lives that are really difficult, and I think that that's important too. I think there's, to me, a certain amount of a therapeutic thing that goes in with Times of Grace, that it's intense and it needs to be intense. And I think because of that, it pulls the emotion out of people and hopefully helps people as well. And I think that's kind of our intention, creating a piece of art that affects people on a very deep level.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was something that, these themes of loss and separation, there is this overall theme to the album. How was that like, I guess, bonding with your bandmates over sharing such similar experiences?
Yeah, it's just like what I was saying earlier about the connecting with people. I think everybody's got a story, and figuring out the similarities we all have. Who hasn't dealt with some sort of loss? Who hasn't dealt with separation? Who hasn't gone through breakups or had to deal with deaths or divorces? I think it's a common thing that we all have. And when you're in the small space of a recording studio and trying to document that, it's a real bonding experience. I think Adam and I have just become so much closer because of it, because while we're writing some of these things, we're living it. So I had a few breakdowns. I had moments where it was difficult to sing a part, and we had to take a break and we would talk about it. And then sometimes that would turn into writing more lyrics on the spot because I was feeling it immediately. So it was a pretty incredible experience in retrospect, and not an experience that I don't think a lot of people would be able to do, as far as like, I don't think I could do that with somebody else in the room. It's got to be a very intimate sort of like somebody you trust fully to just be yourself and be, vulnerable, really.
Were there any songs in particular that were perhaps either the most cathartic or the most difficult in those moments to record? Is there any that stands out?
Yeah, there was two that stand out for me personally. Carry the Weight, which is towards the end of the record, which you might not have heard if you didn't hear the whole record. That song is about losing someone to suicide and the aftermath of dealing with that loss and the desire to know why and what could I have done, and just that feeling that it's a different type of loss. It's one thing to lose somebody from natural causes or something you can sort of wrap your head around, but when it's suicide, especially if you didn't see it coming, it's such a hard topic to like wrap your head around. And to me, being able to write that stuff out, and it's almost as if when you're having a conversation with somebody or you're with a therapist and you say something, and as you're saying it, you're feeling it, and you like have this moment of like, wow, I didn't realize I felt that way. That song was, as we were working on it, as I was singing it, it was hitting me at the same time as I was writing it. So it was very in the moment, like intense. And then Far From Heavenless is another one that, the whole middle section was sort of like a spoken word poetry part. That happened in real time. We were recording, and there was this whole section where I was like, I don't really know what to do here. I kind of had an idea. And Adam's like, well, why don't we just stop right now? And like, what's this song all about? Let's talk about it. And we talked about it, and he's like, well, go in the other room and write about that. And I actually just knelt down in front of him with the pen and paper, and I was like, I wrote this poem. And he's like, well, just say that into the microphone, just as it comes out of you. And it got more intense as I went on, and I just turned it into a yell, and he's like, that's what we're going for. So we did a second take, and that's what you hear. It's like, it was just on the spot, and it was intense. I had tears in my eyes. I was pissed.
Wow. That's like pure art right there, when you can just write in the moment, record it, second take, like so raw.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's not always like that, especially with Adam, because he's such a perfectionist. So when we do strike that energy, that's amazing. That's my favorite part of our working relationship, when we hit those moments and it's there. It's incredible.
Wow. So obviously, with such deeply personal songs, do you ever get nervous, putting these songs out there, especially leading up to the release of this body of work?
Yeah, I have to say no, not really. I don't even know why. especially with this album. I just feel like Times of Grace is different. It might be different if it was Killswitch, and I knew I had to immediately go out and tour on this, and I know that people are going to be singing along to it. Where with Times of Grace, that's not guaranteed, and it doesn't even really enter our thoughts because we have such a long time to work on it, and there's no record label sort of pushing us to do this or got a time limit. We got to get this out. We got to get back on the road. There's none of that. So when you clear those expectations off the table, the nerves sort of just go away. And I'm so proud of this record. And I feel like if people don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's great. I don't know. I think it's funny. I don't really care if people don't like it, but I also want people to like it because I feel like it could be very therapeutic and help a lot of people, at least the subject matter of it. So yeah, I'm not really nervous about it, which is weird.
Cool. It's going to connect with the people that kind of need to hear it, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, for the people who need to hear it, they're going to hear it. And for people who want to hear, a brutal breakdown, it's the wrong band.
Yeah. So, I mean, you did decide to put out this album on your own record label. What led to that decision?
A long time of negotiating and just kind of weighing where we are with the band and where we are in this world right now with, we have Killswitch, we have our career, and with Times of Grace, it just felt like, let's keep this free. There's no guarantees what's going to happen with it. We don't want to owe a record label a bunch of money. We don't want to have any pressure to have someone say you need to tour on this. Because if you're signing a record contract, there's a lot of things that go with that. And we had some pretty crazy offers with some really like staggering money. And it was just like, that's not who we are. That's not what we're trying to do. So we're able to steer this ship in a whole different way. We're calling all the shots. And if the album sells well, if people care enough to buy a record these days, which, that's not an expectation of ours, we're going to see a ton more money from album sales, which is like nuts. And then owning the rights, retaining the rights to it. And, years down the line, we can remix it. We can do whatever we want and not ask anybody permission or have to go through a lawyer. There's none of that. We took it all out. And it just seemed like a quote unquote risk to take. Like, if you've got the means to do it, and, through ADA, the distribution company we work with, they fronted some money, but not half as much as you would get with a record label. It's low risk, and it potentially is better for the future, for what we're going to do and retaining your ownership. I think it's really important these days because no one's really selling a ton of records. So it's not about that anymore.
Yeah, I love the fact, the music industry's changed so much even in the past 5 years, let alone 10 years. And I love the fact that so many musicians such as yourself are choosing that sort of independent option, and you can do it yourself, especially with, the technology that's available and digital distribution and everything. Is that something that you'd recommend to up and coming bands as well?
Yeah, but I think, the landscape is changing. And I think that being said, even where we are now with streaming and Zoom, there's so many possibilities now for younger bands to take advantage of. You don't have to go out and sell a ton of records or, pound the pavement on the road for 2 years and go broke anymore. You could have an incredible streaming thing in your own living room with internet cameras and a cheap, or audio rig. You can do so much on your own and build your audience and have streaming numbers that the promoters will look at and go, wow, that person did it all on their own. They didn't need a record label. I would say the one thing that you're going to need is internet presence, and you're going to need promotion. As far as a record label, they're pretty much just a bank that gives you a loan and then helps you figure out how to do stuff. But in this day and age, there's so many independent people you can hire on yourself. PR people, marketing people that are kids. Like, there's so many people just doing it rogue. You don't really need to sign a contract anywhere. So I would say take full advantage of everything you got and just be smart and be careful who you do business with. But it's like the wild, wild west right now with the internet. And now that we've got a way to stream, there's so many things you can do with that. You don't need anybody. Yeah. Pretty exciting.
Definitely. And speaking of the internet, you have this podcast now that started earlier in the year, Stoke The Fire. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started a podcast, what the pod is about, if listeners or viewers haven't caught on to it yet?
Yeah. So the basis for it is like, conversations you would have around the fire, you know, whether that be ghost stories or talking about life or your childhood, or, you know, those things that we do when we let our guard down. Because I feel like fires always do that with people. They bring out this other side. You know, it's a collective sigh sometimes, or, you know, you're sharing food and having some drinks under a blanket of stars. Like, there's so much that goes around the fire, and that concept we wanted to take into where we are now, like, and going through this really difficult time in all of our lives. And it was pitched by Matt Stocks, my partner in the podcast, who's a brilliant man. He's got his own podcast called Life in the Stocks. He came to me with the idea, and we talked about it for about a month or a month and a half. And I was like, let's do it. I want to talk about life. If we have a musician on, we're not talking about your newest record. We're not promoting anything. It's legitimately like, why do you do music? What was your childhood like? Like, did you ever experiment with drugs? Like, tell us about your belief in God. It's that. It's deep. It's emotional. It's beautiful. There's been absolutely incredible moments we've had. And the cool thing about this as well is you as the listener can come on. So we have an email that we give out to everyone, stokethefirepod@gmail.com. You can write in with your story. And if we like it, you could potentially be a guest. And some of our like listener guests have been the most profound ones. So, you know, you're going to get musicians and artists and people you know, but you're also going to get, you know, you could be on it. It's nuts. And it's opened my eyes to how important human connection and conversation is. And it's really given me a passion for it. Like, I get a similar buzz out of it, a similar feeling that I do with music and performing on stage. This is something that I started out as like a quote unquote hobby, but it really changed my life and my perception. And I plan on doing this for a long time. I absolutely love it. It's great.
Absolutely. I mean, I was listening to an episode where you were talking about how much you've reconnected with nature recently and how important that is for, you know, grounding and mindset and everything. And you were saying that you have like Buddhist monks just wandering around your area. Can you tell us a little bit about how nature has helped through all these ups and downs of the pandemic, of, you know, the loss and separation that you've experienced in your life?
Yeah, nature is the ultimate therapy. And I think if you're paying attention and you're quiet and humble enough, nature is speaking. It's speaking on different levels. You know, it's not necessarily an audible voice, you know, but I truly believe that the great spirit or God speaks through nature, whether that be, you know, the river near my house, or the mountains, or the way the clouds move, or the sun, or the birds chirping, or the howling of the coyote. All of these things remind us that we are part of nature. We're not above it. You know, we are caretakers of this world, and being reminded of that harmony that we should be living in really pulls you out of your own neurosis, your own idea of what your world is, and these things that we stress so hard over, money and bills, and they're just things we've made up to like wrestle with and struggle with. And nature reminds us that clear all of that away and remember who you are. You know, you're a child of the earth, and it may sound hippie to people, but I got news for you. Your ancestors thought the same way. My ancestors thought the same way. We had medicine men. We had time where we sat around fires once again and talked about existence and solved our problems through discussion and war, unfortunately. But, you know, I think it's just getting back to your roots, and it's really helped me rebuild myself and find a deeper peace that I've never known in my whole life. It's become a regular practice now, because I can walk out of my door and I'm surrounded by nature. I'm near the forest. I'm near the mountains, and it's a place that I don't see myself ever leaving. No matter where I go in the world, I need nature. I need it. It's just incredible. It's a great leveler and a great balancer and a great reminder of who we are in this world.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll let you get on with the rest of your evening, and congratulations again on the album.
Thanks, appreciate it. All else.